Good morning, Jill. Hi. We come from totally different worlds. I came from heat in Dubai. You're in the middle of winter in South Africa. Tell me how it is.
Yeah,
How are you today?
I'm good. As you said, it's a chilly, fresh morning here in Cape Town, but it's bright and sunny, so I'm always appreciative of that, and I'm appreciative of the fact that the world at this moment allows me to have conversations with you sitting far away, but we share common interests and a desire to explore common themes. So, yeah, I'm excited to jump in.
That's so beautiful about technology that we can use it in different ways. Yeah. So you wrote the book 10 Permissions. Can you tell me a little bit around how you come to this? What propelled you to write it? How long did it brew that before you start writing it? And what was that major shift that you found it?
Well, it's probably been brewing my whole life, if I can say, but I can certainly pinpoint it back to my early work in the field of international change, social change. At a very young age, I'm originally from the States. For reasons we can potentially talk more about, I decided to come to South Africa during its transition to democracy in 1993. What was meant to be a sort of short detour before I went back to school, back to the States, and went to law school and carried on my conventional path, became this whew, rich and long trajectory into the world of social change and then organizational change. And I think that theme of permission emerged for me then, which was, I was trying to be a catalyst for change in people's lives. And one of the things that I realized I couldn't give them was permission. That if they wanted to make a change in their lives, they had to give it to themselves. I could give them resources, training, skills, know how, but at the end of the day, the choice to make a change in their lives was theirs alone. And that was both very humbling for me as a young woman who thought I could do amazing things and actually found out there were limitations to that. It was also, the spark, I think, for what then became a further career in sort of saying, okay, how do I play a useful role in helping people to really drive their own growth process, drive their own evolution and adaptation over the course of their lives? Flash forward a couple of decades, and I had started to work on this material again. COVID struck. I decided to sit down and write. I think we were all either making bread or writing books. I fell into the writing books category. I didn't know what I was writing. I actually thought that I was going to write a PDF where I sort of captured some IP around navigating uncertainty, navigating disruption. We were clearly in the midst of it. And I think we still had a mindset then that somehow things would go back to normal, whatever that was. And then, it started to sort of emerge from me that one, there was no going back. This was, to use a very old cliche, the new normal. Two, I had more to say than maybe I thought I did about what it takes to navigate profound uncertainty in your life. And three, I sort of had to keep giving myself permission to keep going with the project and let it evolve alongside me and alongside the world. So yeah, in terms of sitting down to write, I started in 2020 and the book is going to be published now in September. So obviously that was its own process of me kind of trying to nail a message that I felt would be relevant and accessible. I was really determined to write something that I thought would be easy for people to engage with. I didn't want another kind of brainy academic book or something that felt like a slog. It's really meant, when I call it a playbook, it's a playbook. It's a neat, sleek little guide to kind of helping you think about how to make your way through this world more happily, to use your theme. So yeah, it's been a long time coming in many, many ways, but it kind of has been, I guess, percolating in me since I started to work on how to help people make change in their lives.
What was the biggest permission that you gave yourself and changed your life?
Yeah, I mean, I won't now refer to my own from the book, but I will say, part of writing this book has been me kind of giving myself permission to back myself, which I think is such a key theme in all of these permissions. The allowing it to become what I thought it could be rather than what I thought it should be. I mean, the idea of this little PDF was this self-limiting idea that I'll just make something small. I'll just do something small because who am I to try something bigger than that, right? So, I mean, the whole process has been me backing my own authority. And I think that's what a lot of us have to do in order to be happier and more satisfied and make our best contributions to the world. And I think as the world becomes more disruptive, that confidence that you have in yourself to put yourself out there, to come with a little bit more, bravery and authenticity is a real turning point, because that's when you start to invite things into your life that are really going to sort of open it up. So yeah, I think like everybody else, and I suspect as my readers will be, for me, it's been an ongoing process of stepping into my authority, owning my voice, owning my message, and believing that I had something of value to offer to the world.
Listening to you, it just like dropped into my mind. Like if we would give ourselves permission to dream big, to be big, to express ourselves, to just live whatever we want, not in selfish ways, because I think now all this social media and everything brought a lot of narcissism into sight, but just to include other people and to create a better society around us, that would be so good. But also with giving yourself permission, I think you need to accept a lot of accountability and just owning your decisions also. And
Yeah,
yeah, I think for some
100%.
people this is okay, I'm giving myself permission to do that, but then they don't own the consequences that that permission brings. And also I think this can be sometimes a little thing to think about.
For sure. I mean, you used the word a
Mhm.
moment ago of selfish. So I think
Mhm.
one of our pieces of conditioning is that, making our best offer, being our biggest self is somehow a self-centered, selfish sort of stance. And as you say, I think if you do that with the intention of contributing something to others and co-creating with others, like you're doing here with your podcast, it's actually the opposite of being selfish. It's putting
Yes.
your best offer out there so that other people can accept it, reject it, like it, not like it. But it's actually a greater source of accountability than, kind of hiding and just being what you think other people want you to be. I often say, when you come out with your clearest articulation of what you want and what you want to create and what you want to do, in that space, you're actually able to negotiate with people better because you're super clear. You're able to find your like-minded people because they can spot you and know, "Ah, that's somebody that I might want to know." So I think, the suggestion here is that giving yourself permission to step into those spaces is actually one where you kind of get to step into contribution and step into what's my value and how do I put it out there. And that's a scary thing to do it with, real intent, because you face rejection, because you face the reality that, some people are not going to like that it might not succeed. There's no guarantees of this, but once you accept that and once you remind yourself that you're capable of dealing with that outcome, even if it does occur, you then, I think, are better able to show up to other people in a fuller sense and to yourself, right? You're just kind of exploring a fuller range of what it is that you can do and what it is that you can be in the world.
Yeah, and I think when we dream about something, I think we have the capability and capacity that we can achieve this.
Hmm.
So, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. Like you said, it's a lot of obstacles, it's a lot of fears around. And one question, because I like to work also on somatic. So giving yourself permission sounds like really cognitive thing. How do you translate it that your body feels safe while giving yourself a permission
I'm smiling
that you
ear to
really go
ear.
to?
I am literally smiling from ear to ear because I'm in the process of developing a set of somatic prompts and what I'm calling a permissions practice, which is a set of movements. It's based on yoga, but it's not entirely yogic for those who don't do that. But 1000% Do I agree with you that permission is a lived experience? It's a feeling more than a thought. So I really, really, with the book, it was important to me that it wasn't, okay, I'm going to read this set of ideas and then I'm going to sit and ruminate on what permission means to me. I'm going to think about permission in my life. Like, I immediately want to steer people towards exploring permission as a lived experience and what it feels like for me, because I mean, you already used a few words that I associate with it, which is safe. Our I think our childhood memories of permission and experience of permission is often around, am I going to get in trouble? Am I safe? Will some authority figure in my life tell me that I've been bad? Tell me that I've broken the rules? So from a young age, and I talk
Will they
about that.
punish me?
Yes. So there's this embodied, to use this language, this somatic language, set of experiences around fear of punishment, fear of being seen as a bad person, fear of being on the outside of all of the people who are, accepted and good boys and girls. So I think part of this is engaging with your own sense of, what does it feel like for me now that I'm an adult and I'm not 8 years old? I'm 28, 38, 48. What does it feel like for me to feel safe? And let me take that a little bit further, to feel a little bit free, a little bit, liberated, if you will, because the flip side is when I have permission, I'm like, yes, I'm okay. I can go and do the thing I wanted to do, because permission was always about something I wanted, right? And the sense that what I wanted was somehow out of bounds. It wasn't allowed. So at the crux here is, is what I want allowed? Is what I want to be allowed? Is what I want to do allowed? And, in the premise of the book is a lot of our old understanding of who we were allowed to be and what we were allowed to do is unraveling, for better or for worse. A lot of our old stories around, what our identity should be being far more, or they're far more fluid. They're not nearly as fixed as they used to be. So within that space, you have room now to kind of make more choices about what you want to do, who you want to be. And there's pressure in that. There's, a demand on individuals, I think, now to find their way in a way that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago. But a lot of us don't take that up because we're afraid. We're afraid that if we were to say what we wanted to do or be, we'd get in trouble. People would judge us. They think we were weird. So yeah, I think hacking into that, getting into that in your own self is so much here. And you can't see on the camera, but even below that, in your solar plexus, in your gut, one of my permissions is feel your way. That, instinct, intuition, emotion, things that we have historically been told to either dismiss or treat as sort of a shabby alternative to
Don't listen
cognition.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah, in a world that is very fluid, in a world where we will not have all the information at hand, where predictability is out the window, we're going to have to rely on that more and more and step into that and feel our way through some of our decisions. So, yeah, I think that that's a little bit of a frontier right now that we're being invited into, is to explore this somatic intelligence. I wrote about it on Substack this week. That's an intelligence. That's a human intelligence. And in an age where we're now very curious about the impact that artificial intelligence is going to have on us, this is a realm of human experience that I think we're going to be called upon to kind of step into, utilize, explore far more than we have in the past.
Before we dive into a little bit more into this new world that is coming, sometimes, like you said, you have to give yourself permission and everything. But like in my case, when I started studying psychology, I didn't know that I have like a band, like not band, but I said to myself when I was a little girl that I cannot express anger. And I didn't realize that I have this like harsh stop on anger until I heard my professor speak about it. And he said, okay, in this case, that girl or a boy he was talking about, he didn't allow himself to feel anger. And I was like, that's me. And when I heard that and I connected those dots, like, okay, then I start giving myself permission to feel anger, to be angry, to express anger. But before that, I just didn't know I have this, So sometimes giving yourself permission, you need to go a little bit deeper and explore where you put this.
Yes, 100%. I think it's 90% unconscious. So, one of the things I talk about in the book is a permissions paradigm. So, we raise young children to ask for permission, and we reward that behavior, understandably, because they are finding their way and they need rules and boundaries. And we're quite explicit at a young age about that. We also, as you've just referenced, I think reward amongst children a degree of compliance, a degree of acquiescence that we see as desirable because these are people who are not causing waves. We can get into it, but one of my first permission is be willful. So that will, that set of that wide range of feelings from anger to desire to, a lot of our set of lived emotions that we feel allowed to experience narrows to that which we perceive as being most acceptable, least disruptive. And then as we move into an adult world, we don't consciously help young adults to give themselves permission. And as you're describing, it's not that we're consciously sitting there saying, oh, I need permission to feel this, but we're equally not aware of the ways in which we aren't allowing ourselves to do or be or feel a variety of things. So, in many ways, what I'm talking about in the book is making, as you've just described, a set of implicit self limitations explicit. And the only way to do that is by beginning to become aware of it as you have. Like, I didn't realize that there was this kind of unconscious set of rules that shaped my behavior. And they're mine as an adult. Like, very few of us have external authority figures who are enforcing those. They don't have to. And, when you start to think about it, it's like, well, maybe there's a boss who might be an actual authority figure in my life, but everybody else is a peer. And I would throw your parents into that, where, owning your adult authority is really what we're talking about here. And not only because it's a gateway to a greater expression of your unique sort of contributions, but because, as I talk about in the book, in this world, where you have to make so many more choices, where you're overwhelmed by options, where, the default settings of who you were supposed to be and how you were supposed to behave, as I referred to earlier, sort of unraveling and the rules are being rewritten in real time, you've got to decide for yourself because nobody else is going to tell you. So, yeah, making that unconscious set of rules that you operate by explicit in your own mind for you to then start to say, does this serve me? Does this work for me? Maybe it worked for me when I was 9 because, in my family structure and my community, anger wasn't rewarded. But maybe now, I have more room than I'm allowing myself to begin to explore a wider range of feelings. And maybe in so doing, I will find that I'm then able to show up to people and have relationships, conversations, exchanges that feel more satisfying to me because I'm not always sort of shape shifting to satisfy somebody else. I'm more fully stepping into what it is that I want to feel or do or be.
Yeah, that's so true. And we have a bigger comfort zone. It's expanding when we give ourselves permission. Yeah, because it's easy to think about permissions like, okay, I want to record something, I want to be on camera, but then I'm afraid how other people will perceive me, how they will, if they will judge me or I will get some hate. Then it's easier to give yourself permission. Okay, I give myself permission to be seen, to be heard, to be judged in a way. But for some things, I think it's a little bit harder if we don't know why we have something like it stems out of our childhood and the things that our parents said, okay, you cannot do that in order to, or we see that when in my example, when I was angry, I was just ignored like completely, or they told me that this is not for girls, boys can be angry, but girls cannot be angry, so these differences. And I went through a lot of learnings afterwards. What are those 10 different permissions that you are talking about in the book?
Yeah, there are 10 kind of provocations, let me call it that, to to look at your implicit sort of adulting story, how you're supposed to do this adult life of yours, and how you're going to allow yourself to do it. And many of them, as you say, are kind of getting at some of our core ideas around how we're supposed to behave. So starting with the first one, which is be willful. The willful child was the problematic one. You were not supposed to name, own, and act on your desires. You were supposed to look externally for people to tell you who you were supposed to be, what you were supposed to do. You picked your career and your identity off of a shelf of pre-approved options and said, cool, I'll do that. So that tapping into your own desire is where, for me, it all begins. Because if you can't do that, then the rest of these are kind of immaterial, and we can talk about it more, but it doesn't always have to kind of start up at the highest point of, we often have these conversations around some of our biggest desires and our biggest choices. And what I really encourage in this is for people to get down to some other more everyday things, to activate that voice within them and that sense of, what do I want? And am I allowed to have it? And what happens when I articulate it to other people? So that for me is where it starts. And the second one is go astray, which is a challenge to linear mindsets that, once you historically sort of decided what you wanted to do and who you wanted to be, that's who you were for your whole life. And your strategy was to stay in your lane because that's how you remain safe. And this is sort of saying, in a fluid world where you need to optimize for adaptability, you need to optimize for your willingness and ability to learn, to grow, to change, that sort of linear mindset is going to get you into a lot of trouble. Because for as long as you're holding the course, you're not learning, you're not having to remain open. And every single time that you make a change in your life, you're becoming that much more sort of fluid yourself, that much more willing and able to roll a little bit with change as it happens. And I can go through all of these, but it goes to feel your way, as I already mentioned, which is, how you use instinct and intuition once you're out in the world. Take it outside, which is, how do you sort of move beyond your bubble? Because adult life can get very narrow and you kind of go head down and this is who I am and this is who I'm always going to be. And it's like, keep exposing yourself to things outside of that. And within that context, experiment. Again, all of this is really about creating a sense of receptivity, curiosity, adaptability. Because for me, in this world, those things are golden. Those are the ways that you not only, and this is where I think the interesting offer is for us right now, where we have a potential that, for instance, my parents didn't, to kind of knit together happiness and security. So they were told, if you want to be secure, you have to trade off your personal satisfaction. This is not about happiness. And I think one of the offers moving forward is for you to try and find a way to connect those two. And I can talk about the rest of the 10, but maybe, that's for people who want to dive a little bit deeper and learn more about the book. But they're all really about sort of a very different way of thinking about how you're allowed to navigate your adult life, what good looks like, how you might define and explore happiness in this world, and a reminder that you're allowed to do that it's okay, and that your version of that is good. Because I think one of my motivations in this was just the number of people I know whose lives look nothing like they expected, whose lives look nothing like their parents or what they think they should be at some particular very outdated milestone. And part of the undercurrent here is to say that, we don't need to keep holding up this kind of boomer standard as the gold-plated adult story. We need new stories. We need now stories. And those are good ones. They're not, not good enough because they don't include, a 401k and a this and a that. It's like, there are a lot of people walking around feeling inadequate, feeling weird. And I think part of this is sort of saying, it's okay if your life looks unconventional or unexpected. The whole world is unconventional and unexpected. So let's honor those stories and allow people to sort of create them with a little bit more confidence and courage.
I think with those permissions that we give ourselves, we grow and we become a different person. Because I think the most lame excuse is, this is me, I cannot change. and then it's just like, I'm doing this the way I'm used to, that I was taught to, because I cannot change, because people don't change. But I think this is like far from the truth, because we can change if we want to.
Oh, yes.
If we have the wish, we all have the capability to change something in our behavior, in our mindset, in the way we look at the world. And I think one way is to travel around, like you went from US to Africa. And I think this also changed a little bit the perspective for you. Like for me, when I came here to Dubai and start traveling a little bit around. So
Yeah.
and then when you can see how people are living and that they are much happier with less, that changes a lot of things. And you can start questioning yourself, okay, is this material world that everybody is showing me that I'm going to be happy if I have it, is it true that this brings me happiness? And then you see, no, it's not. It's something deeper. It's something that you can feel in yourself. And when you contribute to something, when you go through hardships, that brings you happiness when you come out on the other side. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if I can potentially tap into a little bit of my, revolutionary self here, we've been told for a very long time that we should be happy with collecting a paycheck, that's about as good as we should hope for. And if we wanted more than that, there was a greediness to it, there was a delusionary quality to it. And essentially, we have been raised since the industrial era and prior to that, but up until now, to show up to jobs day in and day out. That fixed sense of who we were and what we should expect and what we should desire served the purpose of making us compliant labor that accepted the fact that, I shouldn't want more than to just get my paycheck and go home. And that's fine. I think for a lot of people that does provide that sense of security, if you will, although it never was, because it always could be taken away.
For now.
Yeah, for now, for today, literally for today. And I think what's happened over the past, certainly 20 years was that, again, that unraveling of all of it can be taken away. I have a sense that potentially there's more that I could aspire to. And it's not beyond me to aspire to that. And now that we're living in a world where we cannot, as I kind of say, put on a suit and sleepwalk anymore, we have to really take far greater responsibility for and control over our own change. And I sort of see like personal change management, if you will, as like a 21st century skill set. This is not a fixed world. You cannot ride on the fact that you are a fixed entity. And if you do, you will be really irrelevant within a changing workforce really soon. So it's a very outdated mindset. And I think that's one that, we need to kind of intentionally get after and say, that's rubbish. We are fluid creatures. The world is a fluid ecosystem. And more than ever, we need to own the fact that part of our responsibility of being human today is driving our own growth and evolution. And that isn't some woo-woo for people who go to retreats and cold plunge. That is for every human who wants to figure out how to keep showing up day in and day out and continuing to be relevant and have a secure and satisfying livelihood. So yeah, I think, and I'm curious to see as the generations, and I think it is what we're seeing, that subsequent generations get more and more fluid with each one. And those of us, we sit there with great horror going, oh my gosh, look at them. But they're adapting to very different circumstances. So of course they are. But yeah, this whole book really challenges that idea that you are a fixed entity and wants you to engage with how much that still serves you in a very fluid world.
That's such a good question. Is this really serving me still? And I think if people would ask themselves that question, and then what is in my power to change or to solve this or to evolve in this, that would make such a huge difference. And people would be better off in the end of the day.
Yeah, I start off the book by saying, you're imprinted with a story. As you started to reference in yourself, part of your story was anger's not allowed. We all have our story. This is elevating that story to a higher degree of conscious awareness. And then I say, actually, in the beginning, some of that story doesn't serve you anymore. And maybe it never has, but you just operated from it largely unconsciously because it was either handed to you or you decided that this was the best way for you to survive in a certain set of circumstances. But those change.
I would say it served our parents.
That too, you know. And I think we have a lot of adults who are still trying to satisfy parents. I mean, 50-year-old people who come to me and still worry about what their parents think. And, you know, it's kind of adults who are willing and able to step into a greater degree of their own power and authority is, you know, an underlying call here because the world is desperate for it. And I think it's central, as you say, to people kind of finding a little bit more satisfaction in themselves and in their lives.
If you could gift our audience one exercise like that, it takes them like less than 5 minutes to build some micro habit to give themselves some new permissions, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, you get a downloadable workbook with the book. There's a QR code for a downloadable getting started workbook. And it's all about, you know, I want you to start this on a weekend. I think weekends are great places because there's all sorts of room within a weekend to decide, what do I want? I describe weekends as like little agency playgrounds. So, you know, I have like Saturday afternoon challenges of simply beginning to ask yourself, what do I want to do today? What do I want to do this afternoon? Or what do I want to have for lunch? And these sound like the silliest questions, but if you are amazed at how many people in being asked that question go, I don't know, what do you want? So the simple practice of continually asking yourself in a micro situation that is low stakes, so there's nothing big at stake here, and potentially high pleasure. Like if I were to name what I wanted, I might, you know, have a really nice experience out of it because we want to create a virtuous cycle of me naming what I want, me sort of deciding if or how I get that, and coming up against the fact that maybe my partner will want something different. Well, that's okay. You know, if able to more clearly articulate that to other people, then they can go, oh, okay, I don't really feel like going to the park this afternoon. Okay. So then you learn how to say, well, maybe we can do two things. Maybe we'll do your thing this afternoon and my thing tomorrow. But what a lot of people do, which we already know, is to stifle all of that completely. And then somebody else says, I want to go see a movie. And you go, okay, fine. And then you have this kind of weak-willed, high resentment situation whereby you are completely unable to either, you know, act on your own will and your own desires, and you're actually not a great partner to somebody else either, because chances are you've got a lifetime of frustration built up inside of you. So, you know, my micro habit is to use your weekends as, you know, playgrounds for agency, playgrounds for experimenting, trying new things, getting outside, taking small steps, doing a lot of this because we always try and go straight into my job, my partner, my purpose, my geographic location, all these massive decisions that we feel completely, you know, stuck in trying to grapple with. And I'm really all about don't go there first. Work with your life within the existing framework. Start to stretch out into it. Start to show up into it. There's so much more room here than you are allowing yourself to explore. And that is where your power sits, right? It is not by making some big high stakes decision that you go, oh, look, I got a new job. And then how many people do you know go and get that new job? And then I'm still not very satisfied. Well, of course you're not. All you did was move the furniture around in your life, but you haven't shifted. So this is about, you know, a much more of a sort of practice around coming into self than it is about making high stakes decisions. I really want people to come into this not as I'm fixing my problems. I want them to come into this as I am building a practice to kind of drive and design and guide my life in such a way that it will start to feel more satisfying. And that starts with satisfying days. You cannot build a satisfying life out of unsatisfying days. So let's start with a day, and the greatest days are the weekends when we have space, and maybe in Arab countries, weekends are different. Whatever your days off are, choose those days and start to play around there and then see what starts bubbling up for you.
Because if we deny ourselves happiness and exploring the world, our inner world also, and we wait that for the day that we will go into retirement, I think we cannot be happy then, because we are so wired in the misery that you just cannot get out. And older you are, harder it is, I think. Before we started recording, we were talking about this new emerging world of AI and technology. What would your advice be to people, like how to get curious about it, how to prepare themselves for this new thing that is coming? Because the future, as it seems like, it's going to be totally different, like what we know in this day standards.
Yeah. Well, I think, common human behaviors in the face of something as overwhelming as this, which we can't make sense of it from where we are. The default human behavior is for most of us to shut down, to wait until we're forced to deal with it, to do that. So I think this is a great time for everybody to, first of all, just observe yourself. Just begin with great curiosity and care, not with judgment, to kind of go, what's my relationship with this? Like, just observe. Am I interested in anything about this? Note that down. What pieces of this am I interested in? What pieces of it feel scariest to me? What are my questions? What do I not understand? Like, this doesn't have to be, you can take notes on your phone, you can do whatever you want to do to just get aware of your own posture and attitude towards this, because it speaks a lot to your own way of navigating change and transition. And obviously this permissions practice that I'm talking about is, as we've talked about, is just a very heightened self-awareness of, what do I do when faced with this? I would then say to follow your curiosity in the smallest way possible. The book is all about this kind of inductive exploration. Like, you don't have to take big leaps. You don't have to sign up for a course. There's so much that's online. There's so much that's available to us now to just allow ourselves to start to explore without being afraid. So your biggest companion in any of these things is your own fear that I don't know how to do it, that I'm going to look stupid, that I'm soon going to be irrelevant, that my value in the current world is about to evaporate. So I need to get on those things. And I'm going to raise my hand here because I am not an early adopter of these things at all. I was for a very long time like, my husband is far more curious about them. So I wanted to explore the use of AI with my book, because everything I'm reading and everything I know is that particularly young people are using AI assistants for a lot of things. So I decided to create an AI assistant for my book. And that 6 months ago would have been unthinkable to me. And the more that I gave myself permission to play around very quietly, nobody needed to know. I didn't need to make a big deal out of it, but I just gave myself time and space, again, in my off time, to sit there, figure out the tools. He was helpful. So I would say find somebody who might be a helpful companion to you in this process. But I just allowed myself to explore in a low stakes situation where if I found out that I couldn't do it, or it wasn't going to work, that was okay. So now's the time. Like, do not wait until your job is on the line in order to start playing around with this stuff, following your curiosity, gaining a low-level degree of receptivity to what it is. I'm now like so excited about all of it because as a solopreneur, as a solo creator, I think it's changing our lives. In addition to creating an AI assistant, I made my own website. Like, these are not things I could have done. So also challenge your inner script about what this means to you. Like, maybe this is empowering beyond measure. Maybe there's something here that's going to be a ticket for you to find out that you can do things that you once thought were impossible. I have a default script about technology, which is that it scares me and I'm not good at it. And what I'm doing is playing around with that script. So that's the invitation right now. Play around with it before it comes after you. And then you're in this, threat state where you're not going to be open to playing with anything. You're going to be fighting for survival.
It's better to start small and step by step than when you're really forced to learn it like from scratch.
Yeah.
What is your secret for a happy life?
Exploring. I think that's always been a key thing for me, was allowing myself to step into the new, whatever that looked like. I'm going to, pick up from where I just dropped off. Like, I feel it made me so happy to make my own website, because I was like, oh my gosh, I can do something that I didn't know I could do. For me, having a life that's rich in sort of I can moments, I tried it moments, I did it moments, where I feel alive and full of possibility, like that for me is happiness. When I feel hopeless, when I feel like stuck and I can't see a way to something, interesting or exciting, that's when I know I'm in my worst moments. For me, a very healthy relationship with novelty and exploration is critical to me being happy.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Where can people find you? Where can people buy your book?
It is currently available for pre-order on Amazon, and I really am encouraging everybody to pre-order it, because that sort of sparks the Amazon algorithm to start to push it out more. So please go ahead and pre-order it now. It's officially for sale on the 16th of September, and it will be in bookstores in the US and across Europe and the rest of the world sort of towards the end of the year. My website, 10permissions.com, offers a bigger description, obviously, of the other things that I'm putting into the world to help people find their way. And I'm active on LinkedIn, on the other social media platforms. So yeah, just please reach out and let me know sort of how this message is landing for you, the permissions you're giving yourself, and the ways in which it's sort of opening up space for you in your life.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you, and wishing you all the best with the book and with everything what you're doing and all the future projects. And yeah, it was nice talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Petra.